Hello again and welcome to another episode of I Want to Talk About This Album. And today I'm getting back to AC/DC. I've done quite a few AC/DC episodes in, I have no idea in what order, but I did Dirty Deeds, Dan Bowski, Dirty Deeds Done Dirt Cheap. I did High Voltage, Let There Be Rock, Back in Black, For Those About to Rock, parentheses, We Salute You. And I got a couple more to come as well. But today I'm going to talk about, and the last one was, maybe it was close to a year ago. It was a long, long time ago, the last time I've done AC/DC. Kind of forgot about them, but I'm going to get back to them today with Flick O the Switch. And here it is right here. No hype sticker, as you can see. So I've talked about AC/DC a lot, and so I'm not going to rehash too much. But I will say, I'll repeat that I've never seen AC/DC live. I do have despite that, I have a small and very insignificant AC/DC live story from this tour. My good friend at the time, his name still is Jeff Simpsons, and I think another friend, Simon Overington, and I don't know who else. They were going to see AC/DC on the Flick of the Switch tour at Maple Leaf Gardens in Toronto. I lived in Toronto at the time. We were good friends. And they were going to see them, and we lived in Scarborough, which is in the east end of Toronto. The concert was at Maple Leaf Gardens, which is downtown Toronto, and it's quite a distance, or at least it was back then. Everything seems bigger and longer when you're a kid or a teenager. And I guess they were 13, and I was 13, and their mother or father, somebody was driving them downtown to the concert. They got all the way down there, and they realized somehow they forgot the tickets, and I think had to go all the way back to Scarborough and get the tickets. So that's my my AC/DC concert story for this tour, Flick of the Switch. I had to throw in something. And this is kind of a weird album for me. A couple of things about it. One, it was the last AC/DC album that I ever bought until their most recent one, Power Up, which came out, at this point it must have been, was it about 3 years ago? That was a pandemic album. I think that came out around 2021. Very, very forgotten album, because they didn't tour behind it. And, so I bought that one more out of, I guess, nostalgia, thinking probably correctly that it was going to be the last AC/DC album. And I hadn't bought one since 1983, so I bought Power Up. But yeah, this was the last one I bought. And it's a weird one because I never got into it. Just never, and I don't know why. I'll get into that a little bit more. But I just never got into this one. And this album is very, for me, reminiscent of Motorhead's Iron Fist, which I talked about 3 or 4 episodes ago, 5 episodes ago. Very, very reminiscent. They don't sound alike, but just for the fact, several things. One, they came out just a year apart. Iron Fist came out in 82. Flick of the Switch came out in 83. They were kind of forgotten albums. They all both came in them. Both of them came. I'm getting ahead of myself here. I'm racing. I do this all the time. So Flick of the Switch came out after the incredible 3-album run of Highway to Hell, Back in Black, and For Those About to Rock. Iron Fist came out after Overkill, Bomber, and Ace of Spades. So maybe expectations were high both for Motorhead and AC/DC after that, incredible 3-album run for each of them. They're both self-produced, and I've talked about this before. I think producers are overrated. They get too much credit for great albums and too much blame for bad albums. But Fast Eddie produced Iron Fist, and this Flick of the Switch was it's credited as being produced by AC/DC, which is really, I guess, Malcolm and Angus. It's very easy to blame Fast Eddie or to blame AC/DC, because I think these are considered, both Flick of the Switch and Iron Fist are considered to be, and I talked about this with Iron Fist, they're considered to have kind of strange sounds. Now that could be this retro bias that people have because they see a different name attached to it, so they automatically think that it sounds different, or maybe it does sound different. I don't know. But yeah, I think this was the album that a lot of people, kind of including me, this was a little bit like a farewell album. I never got, as I said, this is the last one I got. Never get into Fly on the Wall. By that point, for me, AC/DC were old guys, And I got Back in Black in, I guess, 1980 or 81. I was 10 or 11 years old, loved it. But this was kind of when I just lost interest in AC/DC. And I think this one also for me, it is a little bit, and again, I'm not sure if it's that it sounds so much different. When I listened to it today, and I listened to it twice today, and I do need notes for it, I have to kind of approach this album really as a new album. Like an album that I've never heard before. Even though I had it in 1983, I never got into it. Not then, and really not since then. So I do have some notes about Flick of the Switch, but just never got into it. There was one song that I did definitely get into, but it just, I don't know, man. This album just didn't do it for me, and so I needed notes. What was I going to say about that? I think overall this album, it's not bad, just like Iron Fist, it's not bad, but it was just one that never caught my attention. You know, it's hard to do 4 great albums in a row. Even 3 is hard. Lots of bands have great back-to-back albums, but to do 3 in a row, Iron Maiden arguably did, God, I mean, depending on where you want to start, Number of the Beast, Peace of Mind, Power Slave is 3. You could go 1 forward to Somewhere in Time, 1 backwards to Killers, or even back to the first album. Metallica did, depending on your preference, you know, the first 3 up to Master of Puppets, or the first 4 up to Justice for All. So I think by this point, maybe I was tired of AC/DC and just wanted something new. And this was 83. I was getting into, different music at this point. And by the way, that 83 Flick of the Switch show that my friend Jeff Simpsons and Simon Overington went to, I think it was Fastway that opened that show, and I will be talking about Fastway at some point. I don't know when. Spoiler alert. And I think this album, when I listened to it today for the first time in quite some time, I always thought that it was really, you know, what's so different about this than Back in Black and For Those About to Rock. But I realized today there is something different. I wish I could articulate exactly what it was. As, you know, the most I could come up with was that to me this one sounds, Flick of the Switch sounds or seems like musically an album that I could see definitely Bon Scott singing this album, the songs on this album, much more than I could imagine him singing anything on Back in Black or For Those About to Rock. This album, it doesn't really have, Back in Black and For Those About to Rock, they had kind of like a sinister tone to them. I talked about this when I did Back in Black. Not just the musical tone, but the overall vibe. It had kind of a sinister feel to it. Hell's Bells, and on For Those About to Rock, Evil Walk, COD, Inject the Venom. They all had kind of like a little bit of a darker tone to it. Flick of the Switch sounds a little bit more, I don't know, not happy, just a little bit more, I don't know. I wish I had the words to come up with why I think Flick of the Switch is different. Am I boring you? So I will get into it now. And something else that I remember about this album is that it was recorded at Compass Point Studios, which back then, as a metalhead, you knew the names of the producers, you knew where they were recorded. And I always remember Compass Point Studios. Iron Maiden did Peace of Mind and Power Slave there. AC/DC for sure did Back in Black at Compass Point, maybe also For Those About to Rock, and they did Flick of the Switch too. And everybody back then used to, and even now you see people, oh, if AC/DC is still recorded at, they should go back to Compass Point Studios, or Iron Maiden should go back to Compass Point, or Metallica should get Flemming Rasmussen, then they'd be good again. I don't know. I don't think it matters where they recorded the album, but I just remember that it was recorded at Compass Point Studios in Bahamas. So I'll get to the track by track now. Don't have too much to say about it. As I said, it's AC/DC, and AC/DC, and I don't mean this in a bad way. They really never changed. All their albums, they don't sound the same, but they never had an experimental album. All their albums just had guitars, vocals, drums, bass. They all had kind of the same style. They weren't the same album, but they never had, as far as I remember, never had keyboards, never had any horns, never had synthesizers, never had a ballad, never had any guest, musicians, never had any outside writers. Again, as far as I can remember, they were always just, you kind of knew what to expect with AC/DC. Just one album to another maybe has better songs. So I'll open this now. And something I noticed that this is very, I guess, tightly wrapped. The shrink wrap is kind of warping the cover there. I don't know if you can see it, but it's quite bent, like Bill Clinton's penis, I think. This is what I want to compare it to. What the fuck? Yeah, man, what am I talking about? All right, so here it is, flick of the switch. And all right. Yeah, and it's a little bit bent. You can kind of, yeah, actually quite a bit bent. That's that shrink wrap is a little bit too tight. Oh, it's nicely embossed. I don't know if the original one was embossed. I did have it at the time. It probably was. I remember Back in Black was embossed. Not this bottom part, but the Angus and the logo is embossed. And how about this record cover? Isn't this, for me, this is, I love it, man. This is maybe even my favorite AC/DC album cover. What would another, definitely not, I mean, Back in Black was good for what it was, but pretty simple. For Those About to Rock, nah, nothing after this. Maybe in the Bon Scott era. Powerage, I guess, was pretty cool. High Voltage was cool, but this might be my favorite AC/DC album cover. I love it. Yeah, produced by AC/DC. All songs written by Young and Johnson. All right, and I guess the inner sleeve is going to be the same as the other ones, which was no lyrics, but it did have lots of good information. I guess this will be no same. This will be no different. Yeah, it's the same. So it's pretty cool. Something to read while you're listening, if you can multitask. And it's going to just have a black vinyl and black label. There it is. Very, very simple. AC/DC is what would be the cliche? A working man's band or a meat and potatoes band? Something like that. Let me get my notes as I go through the track by track right now. So the first song is Rising Power. And something about this album, not Rising Power, a lot of backing vocals on this one. As I mentioned earlier, it didn't really have the sinister tone as Back in Black and For Those About to Rock. And I think this one had more backing vocals, which were kind of made it sound a little bit, it's not pop, God, no, it's not soft, just a little bit nicer maybe. So Rising Power, I thought this was, as an opening song, kind of strange. It's not a bad song, but it doesn't have the energy or the intensity. There's nothing particularly catchy about Rising Power that they would put as the opening song, but they did, and there you go. Next is This House is on Fire. This also, or not also, this has a lot of the backing vocals that I mentioned earlier. This is a typical AC/DC song. Like, AC/DC doesn't really have anything that stands out, and this is one of those. And it's an okay song. Next is Flick of the Switch, the title track. Man, I love this song. This is one that I mentioned earlier that I was or am very familiar with. The only one really. This is what I want in AC/DC. It's powerful. It's energetic. For me, it's kind of in the vein, especially the first 10 or 15 seconds of it. It's in the vein of. It doesn't sound like, but it's reminiscent to me of Sin City, and I love Sin City too. Very, very just a real. What you want from AC/DC, fucking awesome song. This is maybe even, bold claim here, my favorite Brian Johnson era AC/DC song out of all of them. I love the title track for this, which amazing song. Next is Nervous Shakedown. It's a nervous shakedown, another nervous shakedown, again with the backing vocals, kind of anthemic sounding. It's similar to This House is on Fire. It's okay, it's fine. Next is Landslide. This is a very up-tempo song, way faster I think than anything on this. This to me sounds, I can easily hear Bon Scott singing this song more than anything on Back in Black or For Those About to Rock. It's faster, it's way more up-tempo, way more energetic. I shouldn't say energetic, just faster and more up-tempo than anything on Back in Black. And yeah, it would have been a good song I think for Bon Scott to sing. So that was the first side, and as I said, I don't have too much to say, so I'm going through these fairly quickly. The first song on the second side is Guns for Hire. So as I mentioned, Rising Power, maybe not the best opener, but when you had records back then and you had two sides, so you kind of got a second chance to do an opening song. And this one, Guns for Hire, I think is a great opening song to the second side. Maybe it could have been better served as the opening song to the album. This has that good AC/DC energy that I like. Just lyrically, my Guns for Hire, I'm gonna shoot you with desire, or shooting you with desire, or something. Really bad. I guess they're only missing hire. I mean, this is hire like you're hiring somebody. Hire, the comparative adjective of high, and fire. They didn't throw those two words in there. But yeah, Guns for Hire, good song. I like it a lot. Actually, I would say overall I like the second side better than the first side, except for the title track, Flick of the Switch. Next is Deep in the Hole. This one I'm not familiar with lyrically, but I'm pretty sure just based on the title, it's probably about middle infielders in baseball. You get the shortstop and the second baseman, and you always hear them referred to as a ground ball. Deep in the hole. Roberto Alomar of the number 12 of the Blue Jays was famous for going deep in the hole. Ozzie Smith, I think, went deep in the hole, maybe better than anybody. So that's a good baseball song, Deep in the Hole. Who would know that AC/DC is going to sing about baseball? And it's a good song, and it has that classic, the AC/DC. I talked about this was it the last episode with Dave Glessner about Judas Priest, Scream for Vengeance, and we talked about, Dave brought up, I said that Devil's Child sounds like it could have been an AC/DC riff, and he pointed out that AC/DC has that space in their riffs, and I think Deep in the Hole is an example of that. It's got that kind of, the riffs can kind of breathe a little bit. But I really like Deep in the Hole. Next is Bedlam in Belgium. This is another one with more backing vocals, just like This House is on Fire. And what was the other one? On Nervous Shakedown. It's pretty good. It's a good song. Next is Badlands. This is one that this is, I guess, my least favorite on this record. I've talked many times how I never really liked bluesy metal or bluesy music. And this has a real bluesy riff. It sounds almost like a slide guitar. I'm sure it's not quite a slide guitar, but it sounds something like that. And it's reminiscent of, or later, Cinderella, the first song on their second album, Long Cold Winter, was Bad Seamstress Blues, or Falling Apart at the Seams. That sounds like it could have been taken from Badlands. And it also has the backing vocals. And the last song is Brain Shake. This is up-tempo, kind of fast, not quite as fast as Guns for Hire, but it is definitely up-tempo. Another one that I could imagine Bon Scott singing. To me, this is a little bit similar to, or in the vein of, or it reminds me, it brings to mind Riff Raff, which is possibly my favorite AC/DC song out of all of them. I love Riff Raff. And Brain Shake, although it's not nearly as good as Riff Raff, it just, there's part of it that does kind of remind me of Riff Raff. And I'm finished. God, I'm racing. I feel like I'm really racing through these episodes. I don't know why. I know they're long, and I know I'm kind of wordy, and I extend things sometimes, but I don't feel like I have to rush. Yet I do. There we go. So there it is. This is and I guess a lot of people love this album. I can't say that I do, although I can see if people do love it. I couldn't argue with it, because I think it's a good album. Maybe just bad timing for it to come out, but awesome album cover. And it is AC/DC, Flick of the Switch.